Hi, this is Sharon Sputz from Columbia University, welcoming you to the Columbia-IBM Center for Blockchain and Data Transparency 2021 Showcase. We'll be highlighting research and translation projects with impact to our society at large. We are covering the issues of our times and the impact IBM and Columbia University are making on them. Transparency of carbon footprinting data, blockchain's disruption on supply chains, fintech advancements, and the possibilities around data privacy implementation while considering the legal and policy implications. We'll also have a chance to highlight the projects that have gone through our accelerators that are actively working on bridging the gap between research and implementation. To kick us off today will be Shifu Chang, incoming interim dean, School of Engineering and Applied Science, and Richard Dicker, professor of electrical engineering at Columbia University, and Jeanette Wing, Avanesian's director of the Data Science Institute and professor of computer science at Columbia University. Over to you, Shifu.
Thank you, Sharon. Good morning, everyone. I'm Shifu Chen, the Senior Executive Vice Dean of the Engineering School. And as Sharon mentioned, I will be the interim dean of the school on July 1st this year. I'm so happy to be here today to welcome everyone to the showcase of the research of IBM Columbia Blockchain and Data Transparency Center. As you can see on the slide here, collaboration between Columbia University, especially engineering school, and IBM go back many, many years ago. In fact, the first computer science class offered at Columbia University were taught by staff member from IBM Watson Science Computing Lab, which was established at Columbia in 1945. As you can see in this picture here, the building is beautifully located on 116th Street, just in front of the beautiful front gate of Columbia University. It used machines that were donated by Thomas Watson Jr. The lab lasted for 25 years and made major contribution to this exciting new era of computing research. In fact, the lab was the first to provide computing service to the Allies in the Second World War. Next slide, please. The collaboration continued today. The Columbia-IBM Center, as you can see here, was launched in the summer of 2018 at a moment of great excitement around the potential for blockchain and the need for transparency about data. Data Science Institute and Columbia Engineering School worked together with IBM to launch this wonderful, exciting initiative. 3 years later, the opportunity for closer collaboration between Columbia and IBM to confront new challenges are greater than before. Next slide, please. The center was launched with three-part mission: education, research, and acceleration of innovation. It is dedicated to advancing technology for a wide range of application and social impact, while at the same time examining the business model, the ethical and social implication of new technologies. Through this collaboration, we established a world-class center of excellence with many contributions to technology, innovation, thought leadership, and policy. You will see today some of the wonderful innovative projects that are ongoing and hear more about the success of the past year. Now I will turn to Jeanette Wing, the director of the Data Science Institute, to share with us the wonderful accomplishment we have made through the center and introduce today's keynote speaker, Dr. Stacy Hobson from IBM. Thank you so much. Jeanette.
Thank you, Shifu, and welcome to everyone in the audience to participating in today's showcase event that recognizes this very deep collaboration that Columbia University has with IBM. I wanted to just share very briefly some of the accomplishments that we have made along the three tracks that Shifu mentioned: education, research, and accelerator. In terms of education, we specifically were looking for new courses to be developed across the university from engineering to the business school to policy, addressing issues with respect to blockchain and data transparency. If you remember 3 years ago, blockchain was a very exciting technology that people are very interested in, and people wanted to know, how is blockchain going to actually shake up business models and the way in which people collaborate and share data with each other in ideally a privacy preserving and secure manner. So we have developed multiple courses, 5 courses in the past 3 years. These courses are now regularly offered at Columbia University, and they do bring together professors from different parts of the university in the design and execution of these courses. Another way in which our education track contributes to the center and efforts is through internships that IBM has for our students. And so these students are able to work with IBM researchers and IBM employees on projects and getting some real world experience. And so we have had 27 internships, and many other students, over 200 students, have been engaged through the education track of the center. Next slide, please. In terms of research, we have been specifically funding seed grants to, again, bring collaborators across the university and also with IBM to address these issues of blockchain from the technology point of view, and also from the business point of view, and data transparency from issues having to do with ensuring that data is collected in a privacy preserving manner, and that data use is transparent to the end user. So we have sponsored 12 research projects. We've held 6 workshops, and we published many papers. And you can see from the list below on the slide that we really reach across the entire university. It is actually this reach across many disciplines at Columbia University that IBM was very interested in engaging with us. Then the other part of this list shows that, especially with respect to today's event, where we want to show how technology can have a positive impact on society, their research projects actually address some of these issues having to do with carbon emissions and so on. Next slide, please. And finally, the third track is the accelerator track, a very exciting track where we, as Sharon mentioned, bring research to practice. And we were able, through this track, to launch 27 early stage companies. And many of these teams were actually all based in New York City. And we also had a different theme in this particular track that was unique to the accelerator model we call the network cohort. And rather than focusing on early stage projects, we were looking to help grow later stage projects. And then I wanted to mention that IBM mentors, more than 20 of them, have been directly engaged with some of these startups. So those are the accomplishments in just the past 3 years that we have been able to provide through this center and through this collaboration between Columbia University and IBM. And we're very excited to continue this collaboration with IBM because there's so much that we can be doing beyond what either entity can do alone, looking at how technology has societal impact. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Our keynote speaker is Stacy Hobson. She is the director of the Responsible and Inclusive Technologies Group at IBM Research. Her research has spanned multiple areas, including topics such as addressing racial and social inequities, AI transparency, and governmental crisis management. I want to mention that her interests very much align with both the engineering school's theme of engineering for humanity and the Data Science Institute's theme, Data for Good. So Stacy, I welcome you to the showcase event. We're very eager to hear your remarks. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jeanette. I will now share my screen. Perfect. And the topic that I'm going to discuss over the next few minutes is around driving social impact through technology and research investments. So let me start off by talking a little bit about our efforts at IBM, and then I'll go into a bit more detail around some of these efforts and specific projects that we're engaged in. So I've listed just a couple here. The top three are initiatives we have specifically in IBM research. So we have the initiative called Tech for Racial and Social Justice, which is one of the two initiatives I lead, and also the initiative of Responsible and Inclusive Technology. That's the second one that I lead as well. And then we have the Science for Social Good initiative, and we have our corporate social responsibility team at the corporate level as well. So I wanted to highlight these just to show that we have a very strong commitment to doing work and developing technology and focusing on research that has positive and significant societal impact. So I wanted to give a couple of examples in this discussion. So I'm going to focus on three areas today. And these are kind of ways that advanced technologies are fueling innovation in the areas of healthcare, environment, and safety. So I want to introduce these and talk about like technologies that are being used in these specific domains or these specific contexts, and talk a bit about some of the challenges that we're seeing as well, and some of the work that we're doing within IBM Research or IBM to address these. So starting off, I'm going to talk a little bit about the healthcare setting in AI and dermatology. Last month, researchers from Google Health announced a new tool that they're making available to help just people have access to an app that will help them in understanding or getting details on common skin conditions. So you'll be able to use this app to put it over a patch of your skin and get information on the type of skin condition that you may have. And this could be like very, lighter weight skin conditions from like psoriasis, eczema, maybe a rash or so on, to also more advanced conditions like potential skin cancers. And I'm just highlighting this as an example, from Google because of the announcement last month, but a lot of other tech companies have done other technologies similar to this. IBM Research has done a technology around skin cancer detection and so on. And we're seeing that AI can be used in ways to help with identifying some of these skin issues at a level that's as accurate, or in a lot of cases, even more accurate than some dermatologists. So there's the potential for these technologies to be used to augment the work that physicians and dermatologists do, or to help provide information to just regular users so that they can then make informed decisions as they get ready to go to their doctor or get ready to figure out how to handle this particular skin condition that they have. And one thing I wanted to highlight here with this announcement from last month is that they specifically mentioned that to make sure that they're building this technology to work for everyone, the model really accounts for factors like age, sex, race, skin types, and in particular with skin types going from pale skin to a darker brown skin. And so they provided additional information on the data sets that were used and so on. And so some of the references are listed here to the announcement around this particular technology. But one thing that came out a little bit later, and was supported through responses from the research scientists at Google, was that 90% of the data set was composed of people with Fitzpatrick skin tones of 1 to 4. So in the dermatological setting, Fitzpatrick skin tones are the ways that they categorize skin types, with a skin tone of 1 representing very pale skin and a skin tone of 6 representing darker brown skin, or what they listed as black skin. But the concern here is that if 90% of the data set was composed of people with skin tones of 1 to 4, so pale to light brown skin, there's very little representation of skin tones of Fitzpatrick scale 5 and 6. And that's definitely a concern, because as this consumer-based app is being released and people are using it, if you are of a skin tone of 5 or 6, it's likely not to be as accurate for you. So this is definitely one of the issues that we're seeing, not just in this context, but we've seen it in other cases as well. So it's imperative that as technologists and as researchers that we think about these things when it comes to like representation of data sets, when it comes to the work that we're doing, and the types of impact it can have on society, or in particular on certain communities. And it's actually very interesting. Like, this is, one example, but there's lots of examples from the dermatology setting, and that dermatology textbooks, or the types of materials that are being used in graduate and education settings around dermatology does not really have this representation of darker skin tones. So this is indicative of a wider issue in the dermatological domain. So our team, one of our research groups doing work under our theme of tech for racial and social justice, has actually been working on this project for about the past 6 months. So the specific project that they've been working on is called Fairness in Dermatology Texts and Data Sets. And they're actually working very closely with professors from a couple of universities here in the US and internationally, and also working with the American Dermatological Association to really understand more about the root of this challenge when it comes to textbooks, when it comes to data sets and other materials that are being used to train dermatologists and so on. And the team is actually working to develop a standalone tool that will evaluate the level of representation of different skin tones in these types of materials. And again, in this partnership and working with the American Dermatological Association, we have the opportunity to drive better outcomes going forward in ensuring that the materials that are being used are really representative, to also help in the use of these types of technologies or other technologies, or the work that dermatologists do themselves, or how they learn to assess skin conditions across a wide range of skin tones. The team is also working on some future work around automated skin image selection, and also helping to improve segmentation results from darker skin images. And this level of collaboration is also very unique to the work that we're doing, and we encourage that every team that's doing a project around tech for racial and social justice or responsible and inclusive tech really partner with outside groups to ensure that the work that we're doing will have positive impacts and not drive negative impacts. And if you want to learn a little bit more about this work, I'm citing a workshop paper that the team has published earlier this year, and they actually have another paper that will be coming out a little bit later this year as well. So switching over to another example, the second example that I listed earlier, around climate and environmental justice. So I have two images here. One is an image from the CDC that talks a little bit about the Flint water crisis from Flint, Michigan. And I'm sure that many of you all are probably aware of some of the issues in Flint, Michigan with the city and the pipes being corroded, and issues where families, especially in like the lower income parts of the community, were affected by water that was not clean and water that was not useful for drinking. It had lead and other issues in the water. And this has been an ongoing problem, even though this initially occurred in 2014. the problem kind of persists today. So this underscores the need of clean water for communities and for people to thrive, for children to grow and be healthy and so on. So that's one example here in the US. Another example that's a little bit older is that of an image on the right. And so this image is from NASA, and this was right after Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005. And you can see the darker areas on this map. And these are the areas of New Orleans that were flooded after Hurricane Katrina. And, you know, again, people might be aware of, you know, the hurricane and the devastation that hit around this time. But in this particular case with New Orleans, the levees were breached and a lot of the flood waters from the hurricane actually came into the communities. And this caused a broader concern in that it damaged like farmland, you know, with the water, you know, hitting the soil and kind of being in areas that you normally wouldn't have water. There was lots of damage to houses. And when you think about sort of the impact of farmland, houses, the, you know, the actual like human impacts and environmental impacts and health impacts, it now becomes more difficult for the people in that community to get access to fresh fruits and vegetables because you can't farm them locally because of the damage from the flooding. You also have issues with things like mold in some of the abandoned houses, or even if the houses weren't abandoned because some of the residents did not have the financial resources to relocate. You're now living in housing that, you know, is growing mold. And so your family is like dealing with these health impacts and so on. So these are just two examples that even here in the US that we see that, you know, environmental justice, and in this case, clean water and issues around water are really, really central. So going back to this broader idea of climate and environmental justice, in 2021, IBM announced through the Call for Code Global Challenge, a challenge around climate and sustainability. And I quickly showed a picture around the website and a link to the website here. But for this particular challenge, there are 3 themes that we are focused on. So one is around clean water and sanitation. And again, this whole concept of clean water goes back to the examples I gave in the US. And in a minute, I'll give another example globally. But we see that one of the most critical things when it comes to climate, or when it comes to environmental justice, or when it comes to actual people and the impact of climate change, you know, extreme weather events and so on, is the absolute need for clean water. That is just absolutely critical for people to live and be healthy. The second theme is around zero hunger. So this is really looking at, you know, touching on the example I mentioned before with things like flooding and other issues that make it more challenging for certain communities to grow food or have access to, you know, food, or generally the whole issues around food insecurity. And the third theme is around responsible production and green consumption. So I wanted to just introduce this as another effort that we're doing. Everyone's welcome to learn more about the efforts and actually potentially get involved if you're interested. So going back specifically to what we're doing in IBM research around this whole notion of clean water or water conservation, we have a project under Tech for Justice that is in partnership with the Nature Conservancy in Nairobi, Kenya. And this particular initiative is focused on water conservation for a large reservoir that's located in Nairobi that serves over 9 million people in a very large group of farmers. So the goals of this project is to really support the availability of clean water for all of the people that are being served by this particular reservoir. And some of the issues that they're seeing currently are around like sediments in the water. So as you know, the reservoir has like, you know, soil sediments or other sediments that doesn't provide clean water to the actual community. So it makes it challenging for them to use water for farming, drinking, and other needs. And then also, how do they help with kind of like water conservation when it comes to like seasonal changes, dry season versus, you know, rainy season and so on. So we're using the power of AI and data analysis in IBM research in combination with our data and AI team to provide sort of a dashboard and information to the Nature Conservancy and all of the people that are served by this reservoir to help in really supporting this idea of water conservation and providing clean water to the communities. So again, I mentioned a couple of examples of the need for clean water just here in the US, but we know that clean water is a global concern and a global need. So we're doing this work in Nairobi. There's lots of other communities globally or domestically that could leverage what we're doing. And we're doing this as an initial exercise that we then plan to use the technologies and apply in additional contexts, in additional geographies as well. So I want to switch to the third topic that I had listed around human rights and human protections. And I want to touch just on a third area of work that we're doing around human trafficking. And I just wanted to include this image on the left side that highlights that $32 billion every year are generated by human trafficking. So the kinds of people that do human trafficking and really kind of are part of this industry don't really think about the impact to people and the impact to people's lives. They're probably driven by the profit. And because it's such a profitable industry, it's a difficult challenge to address. But again, we're talking about societal impact and how we're using technology in our efforts to really drive societal good, projects around societal good. So I wanted to also highlight some work that we're doing in developing a traffic analysis hub. And this is in partnership with two other organizations, Stop the Traffic and also Clifford Change. And similar to the work that we're doing around water conservation, we're using AI and data science to provide a dashboard to help governments, local, state, national, and so on, to understand locations where trafficking has occurred or is likely to occur, and really helping them with the kinds of information and the data that they need to stop a lot of these issues and really provide protections for people and addressing human rights issues. And again, I'm providing the link here if people want to find out more information about this work. So I just highlighted, just kind of like 3 domains and 3 examples of specific work that we're doing in IBM and IBM research, that's really driving societal impact and focus on societal good. And I'm flashing up this chart that I presented at the beginning that kind of listed some of our initiatives. And I wanted to spend just another minute or two just talking a little bit more about the 2 initiatives that I lead, first around tech for racial and social justice. So I mentioned some of the projects that we're doing. Like I specifically mentioned the AI for Water Conservation Modeling Project, the Fairness in Dermatology Text and Datasets Project, but we have a lot of other projects as well. In the environmental justice context, we have work around electric vehicles and ethics for electric vehicles and electric vehicle infrastructure. We also have a lot of work around fairness in healthcare. So I mentioned that at the beginning, and that was the first example I gave. But in addition to the dermatology focus, we have other projects around fairness in healthcare as well. We're also looking at topics around digital inequality. So when we think about the ongoing mass digitization of services, how does that affect people who are not tech savvy or don't have access to, technology? And, a case in point is sort of the vaccine signups here in the US. A lot of states kind of did the signups through, a web-based system, and some states also had phone lines available, but people reported being on the phone for 5 hours and not being able to really make an appointment. So we're really looking at kind of digital inequality and things that we can do to address that. And then we also have projects around economic empowerment for low-income and or minority communities. And then finally, I just wanted to introduce a little bit about a new initiative that we founded earlier this year that I also lead. And this is around responsible and inclusive technology. So all of the projects that I mentioned before and the work that I mentioned around tech for racial and social justice, I like to say is sort of reactive. in response to a problem, or it's in response to a technology, or it's in response to a need. So it's addressing some type of issue or providing a solution. But it's also imperative that we think about responsibility. We think about inclusion at the beginning stages of the work that we do, whether it's the beginning stages of the research that we do, or the beginning stages of the technology design and development projects that we do. So we created this initiative to focus on that earlier kind of aspect. So how do we help teams and groups within IBM or outside of IBM think about aspects of society, think about aspects of communities, think about aspects of the environment as they're envisioning, technology solutions, as they're doing their research, to be intentional about the work that we do and try to incorporate considerations around inclusion, diverse perspectives, potential impacts, and mitigation of potential negative outcomes very early on. So just very quickly, responsible and inclusive technology is really focused around promoting beneficial outcomes for a wide variety of groups. And considering this intersection of self, which could be the individual that's doing the work or the team that's doing the work, the considerations of business. So it could be, a client, it could be the IBM business, it could be an external group or so on, and also society. So it's not just a focus on there is a challenge or there is a problem that I want to solve, but it's also as I'm doing this, as I'm thinking about this, as I'm creating this concept or this technology that could be beneficial in certain contexts, what are the potential negative outcomes? Can we anticipate that? And if we can anticipate that, can we mitigate it very early on? And again, that's sort of from the, intersection of responsibility and inclusion, but individually responsibility is looking at sort of the impact piece, and inclusion is looking at how do you have diverse voices or diverse perspectives included so you can start to think about some of these impacts. So that is an overview of some of the work that we're doing. I'm highlighting what we're doing within an IBM, but as a tech company, I know other tech companies are thinking about, societal impact, societal good as well. And there's always the opportunity, even as you hear more of what we're doing together with Columbia through the Data Science Institute, for us to really scale our positive impact and do really good work together as partners. So thank you for the time, and I look forward to the additional talks today explaining more about how we're working together in driving societal good and societal impact.
Stacy, thank you so much. That was just incredible. I learned a lot. I am so grateful that we have this partnership with IBM that takes so seriously responsible and inclusive technology. And I'm here now to bring us to session one. And actually, I think that as we go through all the sessions, I hope that you'll see that we're really working to provide some of the building blocks and the pillars to really truly enable responsible and inclusive technology. And this first session, in fact, I think is right in the center, because you can never get there if you don't figure out a way to have transparency and efficiency in carbon footprint quantifications.